Hi everyone, my name's Aleta Coroneo and this is Buddhism in a nutshell, or also known as Buddhism for Beginners. This is week 2. So welcome, and as people join us, if you just introduce yourself in the comment bar, just let me know your name. That would be very nice to know that there are real people out there. We always start with what I like to call an arrival meditation to help us to arrive in the present moment as much as we can, wherever we are right now. And this really short little meditation can just help us to transition from what may have been a really busy, stress-filled day, maybe to a more calm, more settled state of mind. Or maybe not, but we give the body and the mind the opportunity to relax and to be present. So we can just put aside any thoughts of what came before today, putting aside any worries, any plans for the future, anything that's been weighing on our mind, any of those thoughts that have just been going over and over in our head. We can just place all these things aside, just for now, just for this class. And we can always pick them up again at the end of the class, if we wish. So just getting comfortable wherever you are. You might be sitting in a chair or sitting on a cushion or lying on the floor. Just trying to be as comfortable as you can. And in meditation, we aim for being relaxed, but also being alert at the same time. Being aware is the most important thing. So just taking a couple of deep breaths to start, all the way into the belly if you can. And then just letting the breath flow into its natural rhythm. And just feeling the points of contact of our body with the chair or the floor or the cushion holding us. Feeling the solidity and the security of that surface holding us. Having a sense of feeling safe, feeling supported. And just for a moment thinking of our motivation for being here, to listen to a bit of the Buddha's teachings. What's our personal reason for being here right now? And then we see if we can expand this positive motivation outwards, so that any benefit, any insight that we may gain tonight may help not just us to be more calm, happy, wise, compassionate people, but that may affect all those around us, helping them to be more kind, more relaxed, more calm, more wise. And we could spread that out to the entire world, to every being in the world. having the wish that this may result in a more peaceful, compassionate world. And now just noticing how the body is in this moment. No judgment, just noticing how it is. Noticing any areas of tension or tightness, discomfort or pain in the body. And seeing if it's possible to just let go of some of that tension or discomfort or pain with each out breath. Imagining that we can breathe into those areas, tension or discomfort. As we breathe into those areas, imagine suffusing the area with the loving concern of your breath, looking after yourself. And as we imagine breathing out from that area, just imagine letting go of that tightness or discomfort. Just releasing with each out breath. And just noticing how the mind is in this moment. It might be busy or quite calm. Just being aware, state of mind right now. And just for a moment, gently placing our attention on the breath, wherever we notice it the most in this moment. It might be at the nostrils or on the upper lip. It might be the rise and fall of the chest or the rise and fall of the belly. Or it might be the complete wave-like flow of the breath. Wherever you notice the breath the most in this moment, just gently placing our attention there. And just observing each in and each out breath. When the mind wanders, don't worry about it. That's just what minds do. When you notice the mind has wandered, just gently bring the attention back to the breath. Again and again. And having a sense of curiosity about the breath. Noticing whether it's fast or slow. long or short, deep or shallow. Not trying to control the breath in any way, just noticing how it is. Do you notice any difference in temperature between the in and the out breath? You notice a pause between the in and the out breath. Or do they just flow one to the other? There's no right or wrong answer. It's just your experience. Now just noticing the state of the body in this moment. Noticing the state of the mind in this moment. Becoming aware of the points of contact of our body with that solid, secure surface holding it. Noticing the touch of our clothes on our skin and the air on our skin. Noticing the noises outside the room. The noises inside the room. When you're ready, feeling joyful and relaxed, gently open your eyes and give your body a stretch. So last week we talked about Shakyamuni Buddha, this Buddha up behind me. This Shakyamuni Buddha was the historical Buddha of our time. We talked about his life, and we said that he was born an ordinary man, a person just like us, with the same sort of delusions and negativities. And through meditation and working on his mind, he became enlightened. He eliminated all negative qualities of mind, and he perfected all his positive qualities of mind. And this is enlightenment or awakening or becoming a Buddha. And we all have that same potential. Every sentient being, which is every being that has a mind, has the potential to perfect their mind. So Buddha taught that happiness is within our own mind. And he taught the methods, the tools to practice, to access that happiness within. The Tibetan word for Buddhist is Nangpa, which means inner being. So Buddhism is about turning inwards, learning the nature of our mind and training the mind. And this helps us to connect with our innate wisdom and compassion. Meditation is a really important tool in becoming an inner being. The Tibetan word for meditation is Gom, which means to become familiar. So in meditation, we become familiar with our own mind. We get to know our mind. And Lama Yeshe said, meditation doesn't have to be sitting cross-legged. Observing how the mind responds during our daily life, walking, talking, shopping, can be perfect meditation and bring perfect result. When we watch our mind properly, we start to see the delusions in our mind. We stop blaming others for our problems. We recognise that our mistaken actions come from our own deluded mind. And eventually we can let go of these delusions of blaming others for our suffering. We can let go of negative thoughts and attitudes. We can develop the positive qualities of our mind and let go of all those negative qualities of mind. And this is what lasting true happiness is, which sounds pretty good to me. Every being is the same in that we want happiness. We want happiness and we don't want suffering. Every being, all the same in that way. So the Tibetan Buddhist tradition teaches a 7-point meditation posture. This is the traditional posture that's been used for centuries by accomplished meditators as being the most conducive to deep meditation. It allows energy to flow through the channels of the body in the best way. But this traditional posture can be very difficult if we're not brought up sitting cross-legged from a small child, as they are in the East, in Tibet, India. They've been brought up sitting cross-legged. We haven't in the West. We're used to chairs and our posture's not so good. Hi, Nipuna. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but welcome. It's nice to have you here. We're just talking about the traditional 7-point meditation posture in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition. So it can be difficult to maintain this posture in meditation for us Westerners who are not used to it. And it's very important to keep the mind and body happy, comfortable, and free of tension. I think we all know that the mind and the body are interdependent, and a comfortable body helps to gain a calm, clear state of mind. which helps us with concentration and energy flow in meditation. An uncomfortable body blocks the flow of energy. So we should find a compromise between having the perfect posture and sitting in a relaxed, comfortable state in meditation. Just reading the comment. Napuna is from Sri Lanka. Here we have Theravada Buddhism. I think that's what I have known as Theravadan Buddhism. So different pronunciation, or the Sri Lankan word for that. Do you know, Napuna? This tradition of Tibetan Buddhism is Mahayana Buddhism. But what we're speaking about tonight, the Four Noble Truths in particular, are common to all schools and traditions of Buddhism. Yes, it is Theravadan. Okay. Were you brought up as a Buddhist, Napuna, or have you come to Buddhism later in life? It's very different. People who were born as Buddhist compared to people who later on in life choose Buddhism as a religion. I think it's a very different sort of a transformation or an attitude towards Buddhism. I came to Buddhism very late in life. How old was I? About 38, maybe early 30s. You were born a Buddhist. Wow. To me, that's like a dream. I still I look into other religions as well, which I think is fantastic. I don't know much at all about other religions, but I think if I had the time, I would like to really look into the similarities, particular between religions. I find that really fascinating. I think it's much more important to pay attention, focus on what the similarities are rather than just looking at the differences between religions. But that's excellent. You're very fortunate that you have the time and the opportunity to be able to do that, Napuna, and I hope that you get a lot of benefit out of doing that. So this traditional Tibetan Buddhist posture, and I know the Theravadan Buddhists they look beautiful when they sit to meditate. Their back is so straight, their posture is so good, not like mine. And I've seen some just beautiful looking meditators who just seem to remain still and steady as a rock, and they look like they're totally aware. But we just all do the best that we can, and we start where we are. I think that's important to remember. I started meditating how long ago? Just over 20 years ago. And when I started with a modified version of this 7-point traditional posture. But then eventually, with time, I compromised between the perfect posture and my own relaxation, which was important. And I now, for quite a number of years, have actually been meditating lying down in Shavasana position. And that has been of great benefit to me in my meditation and in my Buddhist practice. I had a lot of back pain, and when I was sitting in the traditional posture, it became pretty much just all about pain management in my meditation, which wasn't of much benefit to me. So now lying down, I don't have pain and I can pay more attention to my chosen object of meditation, which is great. And a lot of modern Western teachers in particular do recommend at least trying lying down to meditate. Wai Chong, who is an amazing teacher out at Vajrayana Institute, encourages lying down to meditate, as does Alan Wallace, who is a world-renowned meditation teacher. So I would highly recommend that you try it, even if you are okay sitting, just try lying down for once and see. So just reading the comments, Napuna has a question, and if she was born Buddhist, I hope it's not too hard a question for me because I am an introductory teacher, Napuna, so we'll see how we go. We have several teaching styles of Buddhism here in our country. I know it's the same in India. Mahayana is also different in some ways. But my question is how to find out what's the real Gautama Buddha's pure teaching out of all of these. As I said, I'm an introductory teacher, but I know that Shakyamuni Buddha taught to his audience. He taught in the method that would help the people who were there listening to the teachings at this present time. So he had different focuses of attention, he had different styles of teaching, depending on who his students were at the time. And he gave, it's said, 84,000 teachings. So there's an awful lot of wisdom and methods and tools there in 84,000 teachings. And I think we have to each find what resonates with us. Different strokes for different folks. What's going to help me the most may not help you, Napuna, the most, or anyone. We're all different, and I think it's good to explore and check out different teachers and see what works best for you. The Buddha always said to check up everything that he taught, and these days we're just so fortunate that there's just such a wealth of amazing teachers out there that we can access on the internet at the snap of a finger any time of the day or night. Basically, we can watch the Dalai Lama, we can watch amazing lamas and rinpoches, and it's just incredible. So explore and find what works for you. That was okay. So what's the pure teaching out of all of these? I think we also have to really check out the teacher and develop real trust in that teacher. And that may take a long time of observing that teacher and listening to teachers until we develop a real trust of this teacher, because what the Buddha taught, in my view, was all pure teaching. But then his teachings have been carried down and to us today, and we have to do our best to ensure that that lineage of Buddha to his disciples, to their disciples, carrying all the way to us today. We have to check that that is an authentic lineage. But it's very much checking everything out for ourselves. We have to examine the teachings according to our own knowledge, according to our life experience. We have to always question and decide for ourselves, is this true? Is this of benefit to me? Yeah. Did that answer the question a little bit, Napuna? Thank you very much. And a smile? Smile is good. Thank you, Napuna, for the smile, the encouragement. So I will just quickly run through this 7-point posture. And would be interesting to know how that differs to the Sri Lankan traditional posture. So the first point is legs. And if possible, sit with the legs crossed in a full lotus position, which I certainly cannot do, particularly at this stage of life. The full lotus position has each foot placed sole upward on the opposite thigh. An alternative position to this is the half lotus position, with one foot on the floor under the opposite leg and the other foot is on top of the opposite thigh. A third alternative is simply sitting in cross-legged position with both feet resting on the floor under the opposite thighs. If we sit on a firm cushion that raises the buttocks higher than the knees, can really help in this cross-legged type position. It helps us to keep our spine straight, and it also helps to stop our feet and legs falling asleep. We could also use a low meditation bench, a kneeling stool. We could sit on a chair, lie on the floor, as I say. But the most important thing is to find a suitable position in which you're comfortable. I'm just getting a message on my computer and I'm hoping that's not going to muck anything up. I hope you can see and hear me all right. Napuna says basically the same in Sri Lanka. Okay, interesting. So then the second point is arms. If we're sitting on a cushion, we have our hands loosely in our lap. Traditionally in Tibetan style, we have the right hand resting on the left hand. And it's a bit hard for me to get it up there to show you because my computer's not at a good height. But we have, they say, the right hand of compassion resting in the left hand of wisdom. And then we have our thumbs just lightly touching at the top here. And that forms a shape of a teardrop, they say, or a flame. And then we have some space between our arm and the body to allow for airflow. Just trying to read my notes because I don't use this position. I do this if I'm sitting up. I do that in a chair, so you can do that in any sort of a sitting position. Having the airflow between the arm and the body helps to prevent sleepiness. Napuna's got to go. We'll watch later sometime. Thank you very much for your wisdom. I don't know about wisdom, but I try my best. Well, it's nice to meet you, Napuna, and I hope I meet you again in person someday when we're out of isolation. See you later. The third point in this posture is the back, which is the most important. The back should be as straight as we can comfortably hold it. They say that we should have the image of the vertebrae being like a stack of blocks which are effortlessly resting in a pile. So having a straight spine helps energy to flow freely and contributes greatly to clarity and alertness of mind. So even when we're lying down, we're aiming for a straight spine, comfortably straight. And that really helps with the energy flow and alertness and clarity. The fourth point, the eyes. When you're first starting out meditating, it can be easier to concentrate if your eyes are fully closed. And then as you gain experience in meditation, it is recommended that you learn to leave the eyes just slightly open to admit a little light. Even if you just do this sometimes, it's helpful, I think. And we direct our gaze downwards, not really focusing on anything in particular. And they say that closing the eyes completely may create a tendency towards sluggishness or sleep or daydreaming in meditation, which are all obstacles to our meditation. So it's good to just try every now and then, even to just slightly open your eyes, let a bit of light in. And this helps us to be in more of a meditative state during the day when we're walking around with our eyes open. So it's not like you can only meditate when you sit or lie down and close your eyes. So it gets you more aware and more bringing your meditation into your daily life, which is where all the benefit is when we start bringing the benefits of meditation into our daily life off the cushion. So the fifth point, jaw and mouth should be relaxed, teeth slightly apart with the lips just lightly touching. The sixth point, the tongue should rest just lightly on the upper palate with the tip of the tongue lightly touching the back of the upper teeth. And this reduces the flow of saliva and the need to swallow, which can also be obstacles or distractions in our meditation. The seventh point, the head is slightly inclined forward so that the gaze is directed naturally towards the floor about a metre in front of us. If the chin's held too high, that can, when I find my place on my note, it can cause problems with mental wandering and distraction. Whereas if you drop your head too far forward, that can bring sleepiness or mental dullness. So if you're sitting to meditate and you notice that you are falling asleep or becoming sluggish, you can just try lifting your chin a bit. On the other hand, if you find you're becoming too excited in meditation, you can just slightly drop your chin as well. But as I said, the most important thing in meditation is to be comfortable in this tradition. Comfort is very helpful. And if you want to try that traditional posture, you can modify it. You can do the points that you can manage and just make the body as comfortable as possible with the spine as straight as possible. If you're lying down to meditate in Shavasana position, we have our feet just wider than hip distance apart, with the feet just naturally fanning out as they will. If you have any lower back issues, pain, it can help to place a small cushion under the knees to tilt the pelvis. Our arms are relaxed straight out by our sides. I should have said originally that we're lying on our back. Arms straight out by the sides, and again have a bit of space between the arm and the body to allow for airflow. And if you have your palms facing upwards on the floor is helpful as well. If you can't manage that, just whatever's comfortable. If you are sitting on a chair, it helps to come slightly forward in your chair so that you're not resting up against the backrest of the chair. And your feet should be flat on the floor. So if you need a cushion under them to keep them flat on the floor, then do that. And again, just the spine as straight as you comfortably can manage is important. If you're kneeling on a stool or a cushion, have the hip bones higher than the knees so that the pelvis is tilted, and this helps to keep the spine comfortable and straight as well. So we are going to just do a short body scan meditation now, just being aware of how the body is as we move our attention through the body gently. And this is a really good way to become mindful or aware of the body, and also to relax the body. And it's important to do some awareness of body and relaxation of the body at the beginning of any meditation. So we should always do that at the start of a meditation. And then we may move on to a different object of meditation, but start with relaxing the body first and being aware of how the body is. So if you just get comfortable again, and just allow the body to settle into the seat or the floor, the cushion, wherever you are. And let that surface take the full weight of your body. Feel the solidity of that surface supporting you, and have a sense of being comfortable, being safe. Having the spine as straight as you comfortably can manage. And the eyes can be closed or just slightly open. And again, just thinking about our motivation for meditating. And it may be that by practicing meditation, we may become a more calm, relaxed, kind, compassionate being. And we can expand that out so that that may help all those who come in contact with us as well. And we can spread that out further, that we could help every being to be more calm, more relaxed, more compassionate, more wise. And gently placing our attention on the top of our head. Just noticing any sensations at the crown and the scalp. There may be a slight sense of tingling, a slight sense of pressure, or some warmth or coolness. You might not notice any sensations there, and that's fine. Moving the attention down slowly through the head, through the skull, the back of the head, releasing any tension in the brow, the forehead, ears, gently moving our attention down through the face, relaxing our mouth, checking the jaw to see if we're holding or clenching any tension there. And just breathing normally. Each time you exhale, see if you can relax a little bit more into this posture. Letting go of any tension, any anxiety. Allowing the attention to flow down through the neck and the shoulders, where a lot of tension is often stored. Just checking those areas. Letting the attention flow down through both arms, elbows, wrists, the hands, fingers. Letting go of any tension that we're holding. Moving the attention down through our torso, releasing tightness from the back, the chest. Just breathing into these areas. Your waist, hips, buttocks. Releasing tension in the thighs, the knees. Breathing into any discomfort that you feel. Expanding the space that's there. Releasing tension in the legs, ankles, feet. Letting go all the way out through your toes. Noticing the places of contact of our body with that surface holding it. Feeling the weight and substance of this physical form. Noticing the places where one part of the body is touching another. Noticing any discomfort you may feel in the body. Just noticing it without the need to fix things or to have judgments or opinions. We're just noticing as we scan the body. And as you notice, see if you can bring a bit more relaxation. Imagining breathing into those places. And aware of the breath in this moment. Noticing the movement of the chest and the abdomen as the air moves in and out. Notice the curve of your arms, the shoulders, the body. Relax and take a deep breath and release any remaining tension. And finally, dedicate any positive energy and insights to the well-being and happiness of all living beings. Gradually sensing our environment, aware of our surroundings, aware of the noises, aware of any people around us, and feeling joyful and relaxed. When you're ready, gently open your eyes. Einstein said, "We can't solve a problem with the same mind that created it." Can't solve a problem with the same mind that created it. We need to transform our mind to solve the problem. Makes sense, doesn't it? So the Buddha taught psychological and mind training tools to transform the mind, including meditation, to eliminate our negative qualities, develop the positive qualities, and this is the way to lasting true happiness, according to the Buddha. At the moment, our mistaken ideas are deeply ingrained and habitual. They colour all our relationships, all our dealings with the world. Our picture of reality is exaggerated. The good and bad qualities we see in things are actually created and projected by our own mind. According to Buddha, there is lasting, stable happiness, which everyone has the potential to experience. How good is that? And the Buddha says the cause of happiness lies within our own mind. And the methods for achieving this happiness, this true happiness, can be practiced by anyone. We can learn to be happy at any time, even in situations that we now see as difficult and painful. Eventually, by realizing the way that things actually exist as interdependent, we can eliminate the source of all disturbing states of mind, and we can reach the goal of enlightenment. So it's very inspiring to me to know that the Buddha started out like us, ordinary being with delusions and suffering, just like us. And through his own effort, he attained enlightenment. And he taught the way for others to follow. The Buddha can't save us. He would if he could. but we have to do it ourselves. But the Buddha gave us all the teachings, the tools, the methods, the techniques, so that we can do it ourselves by following his teachings and advice. So we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We can rely on all of his teachings because he put in the hard work and became enlightened himself. And we are very, very fortunate that we have all these teachings, in my view. So, as we mentioned last week, the Buddha's first teaching was the Four Noble Truths, which are the basis of all Buddha's teachings. The Four Noble Truths are the truth of suffering, the truth of the cause of suffering, the truth of cessation of suffering, and the truth of the path that leads to cessation of suffering. And another word for cessation of suffering is true happiness, lasting happiness. So, going into a bit more detail this week than what we did last week on those Four Noble Truths. I'm just looking at the time first. First noble truth, the truth of suffering. The Sanskrit word that was used was dukkha. And many people say that a better translation for dukkha may be dissatisfaction rather than suffering. So every being who is not enlightened experiences suffering or dissatisfaction to some extent. And this suffering, dissatisfaction, refers not only to physical or mental pain, but to any unpleasant, unwanted experience. So it includes discomfort, emotional problems like disappointment, loneliness, worry, depression, stress, dissatisfaction. Some people say that Buddhism is pessimistic because we focus on suffering. We talk about suffering so much. But Buddha is merely pointing out what's true, that none of us are able to get through life without difficulties. And like any problem, if you don't know that it's there, you won't fix it. The point of meditating on and gaining awareness of these sufferings is not to become depressed, but to generate the wish to be free of suffering. So if we don't know we're suffering, we're not going to develop that wish to be free of suffering. We're not going to put in the effort to achieve happiness, to perfect our mind. So it's an inspirational thing. And I think it's something that we need to reflect upon a bit ourselves, to convince ourselves whether or not we actually do have suffering in this life, all of us. You know, some people tend to think that everyone else out there looks pretty happy. To me, I'm the minority who's suffering. But in my experience, the more you get to know people, you know, even those people who seem extremely happy and satisfied with everything, once you get to know them, you see that they do actually suffer. And a lot of people hide their suffering. They don't like to admit their suffering or the dissatisfaction. A lot of people deny even to themselves, that they're suffering. But I think if we really check it out and observe people, get to know people, I think we see that we all do suffer. But the good news is the less attached we are to external things, and the more that we try to help others, and the more that we see things are clouded by our perception, the less suffering that we have. Or, in other words, the more happiness we have. The three main types of suffering, according to Buddha, are the suffering of suffering, the suffering of change, and all-pervasive suffering. The suffering of suffering is the gross physical and emotional suffering, pain, physical pain, emotional pain, including birth, aging, sickness, death, dying. So I think none of us would disagree that we are actually subject to those things in this life. It's the gross level of suffering when we fall and break a bone, or when we kick our toe on the coffee table. We're going to injure ourselves. We're going to have sicknesses. We know that there's that gross level of suffering at times that we can all expect in this life. The suffering of change is more subtle than that. What we usually call happiness is actually just relief of grosser suffering. And one of the traditional examples that they use, which I really like, is when you go to the beach and you're lying on the beach, soaking up the rays, thinking, being really relaxed and thinking, this is happiness. But then eventually you start to get too hot, and that same situation turns into suffering. You're too hot. So what do? You go and jump in the water. And when you jump in the water, it's cool and refreshing and invigorating, and you think, this is happiness. But then if you stay in there too long, what happens? It turns to suffering. So then we get out of the water, we go and lie on the beach again to get warm because we were cold. And then eventually we get too hot again. So happiness is actually like a seesaw. We're going in between suffering and relief of that suffering, back to suffering, to relieving the suffering. It's the suffering of change. We're always trying to correct for that grosser level of suffering. That's a really interesting way to look at it. And you can think about any type of happiness that you experience and just reflect. Am I actually just relieving suffering? We've got to think about these things. We've got to apply them to our own life. When we're happy, think about that. Is it just relief of suffering that I have? Also, if we experienced inherently lasting happiness in that beach example, the more that we did this thing that made us happy, the happier we would be. And we know that's not the case. When you look at the beach example, if you go in the water and you're happy, but the longer you're there, it doesn't make you happier. At some point, it starts to make you less happy, makes you suffer. If we love to sleep in the morning which I love to do because I don't get a chance to do it often. So if I've got the opportunity to sleep in one morning, that's just bliss for me. But the longer I stay in bed, if I actually have to stay in bed all day or longer than that, of course, we know that's going to transform into suffering at some point. We're going to start getting aches and pains, and we're not going to want to stay in bed long term. So the happiness is just relieving suffering, and it keeps seesawing between suffering and less suffering, the suffering of change. So then the third type of suffering is the all-pervasive suffering. This is the most subtle type of suffering. This is can be described as slight dissatisfaction that pervades life just under the surface. And we know that life is always changing, impermanent, without any inner core or substance. So there's always some slight dissatisfaction there. Again, it's something that we need to reflect upon and check out for ourselves. Maybe you, at this stage, you don't believe there's always some dissatisfaction, but just think about different points of your life. Think about a day that you thought was a really, really happy day, a big event, a marriage or a baby being born or something like that. And then just think, was there any dissatisfaction at that time? Even if I thought everything was wonderful, was it absolutely perfect? Or was there something that could have made it perfect? So in other words, it's not perfect happiness. There could have been something making it perfect, which means there was actually a slight dissatisfaction. Subtle. Think about that. Think about it during your day. Reflect back on times of your life that you thought you were happy. We have to question all these things. So this pervasive suffering could be described as the sense that things never quite measure up to our expectations. And the Buddha said that when we go from one life to the next life, we are very subtle energy driven by the force of karma and delusions. So when we go to a next life, we are still subject to this pervasive suffering because we have that negative karma that we carry on our mind stream from one life to the next. We have those delusions still. So that all-pervasive suffering is going to still be there in that next life until we perfect our mind, until we realize our Buddha nature. But the Buddha didn't say give up on happiness. Good news again. Instead, the Buddha says adopt a more effective strategy. Instead of trying to control our whole environment, which is impossible, the Buddha teaches to control our mind, the way we experience our environment. The Buddhist sage Shantideva said it's not possible to find enough leather to cover the entire world to protect our feet. But wearing leather just on our soles of our feet, as we do with shoes, is equivalent to covering the earth with it. So we're transforming our mind rather than the environment out there. We're being an inner being. We need to identify our habitual negative patterns of thinking and replace them with more positive alternatives. This is not going to be a quick fix, but it's a very worthwhile pursuit to work on our mind in this way. It becomes a very meaningful life, I find, to be working on our mind like this. We aim to change not the world, but the way we experience it. And a big thing to remember about suffering is that nothing is permanent and fixed. Everything is impermanent, changing moment by moment. Not realizing this is a big part of our suffering. So when we're suffering, if we can remember this too will end, that nothing is permanent, that is a really big help. Things are constantly changing. This too will end. So the way we are now, trying to find happiness externally, our nature is never satisfied with those sense pleasures that we have. We get a new car and then pretty soon the new model comes out and we want that. So we were happy with the new car, but then eventually that happiness, suffering of change, turns into suffering because we just want that new car. We're so attached to getting what we think we want to make us happy. When we start to see these external things as temporary pleasures, we actually get more enjoyment from them. And that's another thing that we reflect upon and we test out in our daily life. Just playing with the attitude. If I know that this is not going to last, do I get more enjoyment out of it now? I think when I go on holidays, I know it's only for a certain period of time, say 10 days. I'm not on the holiday always thinking, oh, it's only going to last 10 days and letting that ruin my holiday, not getting pleasure. Instead, I really think I have that attitude on holidays that I've got 10 days, I'm going to make the most of every moment. And I really do think that I do get more pleasure, more enjoyment, because I think this is going to end and I'm going to make the most of it right now. I'm going to enjoy it as much as I can. So that's the attitude that we can have in other pleasures. We can always be working on our mind, looking at how we perceive things, transforming our mind so that we are happier and suffering less. 15 minutes. So the second noble truth is the truth of the cause of suffering. The Buddha discovered that the source of our problems and our suffering lies within our own mind. The two main causes of suffering are mental afflictions or delusions and karma, which are the actions that arise out of those mental afflictions that we have. Delusions are anything which disturbs our mind, including disturbing emotions, which arise from our perceptions and our thoughts. Delusions cover both these afflictive emotions like pride, anger, jealousy, and their cause, which is ignorance. And out of the many delusions that exist in our minds, the three main ones, which are called the three poisons, are ignorance, attachment, and aversion. These are the main causes of all our suffering. We can never have that long-term true happiness while we possess the causes of suffering within our mind. So those three poisons, ignorance is the root mental affliction which causes suffering. And all our other afflictions arise from this ignorance. This is ignorance of the way that things truly exist. There's a difference between the way things appear to exist to us and the way they actually exist. We create our own reality. Things aren't inherently good or bad. It's our perception of these things. It's the story that we superimpose onto the situation or our reaction to the situation. And this is why two people in exactly the same situation can have a different experience, because it's all perception. I have some very dear asylum seeker friends who were in detention in New Guinea on Manus Island, and then eventually they were transferred to detention in Australia in a hotel, is where they presently are. When they were transferred from very poor conditions in New Guinea detention to the Australian hotel, they thought that this was luxury to them. They were very happy when they first arrived and went to these hotels. They had a good bed, they had hot water, they had good food. They didn't have any of those things in New Guinea. So they were quite happy when they got here. And then over time, that happiness has turned into suffering. So their outer conditions haven't actually changed at all. They're still in exactly the same place, but their perception has changed. The suffering is all coming from their mind. And, that's quite understandable. I'm not a Buddha, we're not perfect. But it's interesting to observe that they are in the same place, but the happiness has turned to suffering. And with this pandemic that we're facing now, there are people who are being quarantined when they come into the country. They stay in quite luxurious hotels for 2 weeks, quarantined. They can't get out. And the stories I've heard, there are people who, are really suffering in those hotels in quarantine. But it's a luxury hotel. At another time, they would be actually happy to be in that room. Now it's the cause of immense suffering for them. So it's all perception. There are different perceptions of one situation, different stories imposed by people and actions based upon our perceptions. Buddha says there is no reality independent of the observer. Everyone has their own reality, and our interpretation is conditioned by our karma and delusions. And no one person's interpretation is the right way if you're not a Buddha. It's another very interesting thing to reflect upon. They say there are three sides to every story: yours, mine, and the truth is somewhere in between. But what's the truth in between? If we're an imperfect being with delusions in our mind, then what is the truth? There is what we perceive as the truth is conditioned by our state of mind, our delusion. So how can we think it is the truth? 821. And the other main affliction, or poison, as it's called, is attachment, which is exaggerating the positive qualities of people or things, thinking that by possessing this external thing or this person, we will have lasting happiness, because we're exaggerating the positive qualities and then clinging to them, needing them, thinking we need them. And I think the best example of this is when we fall in love and we see this person as just divine. We love everything about them. But then that's attachment. We're exaggerating their qualities. No one's perfect, but we see them that way. We perceive them as perfect for us. But then over time, we start to see their faults. They burp and they fart and they snore and they eat too loud. And then eventually our perception can change so that what was originally attachment changes to aversion, which is the other poison, the main cause of our suffering. With aversion, we're exaggerating the negative qualities of something or someone. And then all our other negative emotions and delusions arise from or are a mixture of these three poisons: the ignorance, attachment, and aversion. It's just a different mix that goes together to make anxiety, fear, selfishness, greed, all those other negative states of mind come from some mix of those three. I'm running out of time. I'm not going to be able to. Okay. So another really big attachment that is very common and very strong is attachment to our reputation. We define ourselves by how others see us. And this is fueled by fear of rejection, and our need to be seen as a good person, a nice person. This is very strong and very common in a lot of people. And there was a palliative care nurse, Bronnie Ware, who wrote a book called The 5 Top Regrets of the Dying. She interviewed many people who were dying, and the top regret out of all of them was, I wish I'd had the courage to live life true to myself, not the life that others expected of me. So fulfilling other people's expectations is, according to Buddha, attachment to our reputation, which can be very strong. This can include the fear of saying no because we have the fear of upsetting someone. And it can include always putting others' needs before our own. This concern over what other thinks of us causes us sometimes to hold on to relationships and situations that have passed their use by date. Our need for approval from others is often the reason for agreeing to something so someone else feels good at the expense of our own well-being. So we need to reflect upon these things. We need to be the boss of our own lives. We have to ask ourselves, what do we truly want in life? And as the Dalai Lama says, we should aspire to do what's most beneficial in the long term. So we have to really think about and get our motivations right for us. Sorry, this is my light that keeps falling over. I really have to fix my external surroundings or just change my perception of this light. Be grateful that I have a light. What was I up to? Yeah, so we examine our motivation and we just aspire to be what's most beneficial. And then we get pleasure and fulfillment as a result. If we are doing something to help someone, just keep track of your motivation. Are you doing it truly to help them, or is it about getting something in return? Develop a positive motivation and then be mindful of that motivation and dedicate your efforts to really helping that person and helping others as well. And this can make you really get so much more happiness out of your efforts. Okay, I'm just trying to work out how to finish up because I've got 3 minutes. And I'm just going to, it's 2 minutes now, so I'm going to say, I hope that you gained something, maybe just one small little thing, even, which you may be able to think of, reflect upon more, check up more, and maybe you can find some benefit in applying these reflections, thinking about these teachings of the Buddha, which may help you to have a more meaningful life, a life being truer to yourself, to what your aspirations are, to helping other people, which is the source of our happiness. And you put in effort to come here tonight to listen to these teachings. So let's just dedicate the effort that we put into listening with an open mind, to rejoicing that we are trying to work on our own mind to help us and everyone else, maybe, to be happier, kinder, wiser people, to have a more peaceful world. And just try and check out these things in your daily life. Think about these things in your daily life. See if they ring true to you. See if there's a way that they can help you to eliminate negative qualities of mind, develop positive qualities of mind, and ultimately to help us and everyone else to be happy. Thank you very much. And I hope that I see you all in person at VI soon. I don't know when. But this too will end. Everything's impermanent. And thank you for being with me. Good night. Right on 8:30. Good timing. Bye.